Welcome to this week's edition of The Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. I'm your host, Tony Simeone, and joined as always by Dick Corbett, head coach for Notre Dame Football, Brian Kelly. It's now time to break down Notre Dame's 41-13 victory over Wisconsin. Coach, early on there, that first drive put the defense in a tough spot. Yeah. But they, again, like they have so many times this year, only allowed a field goal. Seemed like early on points were going to be at a premium. I thought the defense played really well in that first half.
No doubt. And I think that's what I was talking about earlier, is that the building of this defense is one where they're gaining a lot more confidence in the teachings and what we're doing. And each other, like they're trusting each other, and you could start to see that come together, and they're keeping people out of the end zone, and that's huge. When you keep them to a field goal, I think everybody starts to feel like, okay, if our defense can do that, now it's on the offense now to put something together.
The offense did put together two 15-plus play drives. They moved the ball pretty well, missed one field goal, but made another, and then the defense came back out and again got that huge stop. Jacob Lacey, 4th down and 1. What did you see on that play that I think really shifted some momentum for you guys?
Well, you know, Jacob's forced into a significant role because Kurt Heinrich, one of our best inside guys, was in the concussion protocol. And we have great faith in Jacob. And he was able to penetrate. We moved the front, and he's so athletic. He gets into the backfield and makes the play on the running back coming from the backside. And just another example of the kind of depth that we have, and a really, really nice play by Jacob.
That set up that next 16-play drive that led to the Jonathan Dorr 51-yard field goal. When he came back on the field after missing his first, I mean, you guys have said throughout the year you have so much confidence in him. What'd you see in him that, let you put him out there for that 50-plus yard?
Well, that's another thing, I was talking about at the outset about perseverance. Our guys forget those things, and that's what you have to do to be a really good football team, is that you have to focus and then refocus on the next play, and that's what he did. Look, you can't let that linger. You didn't kick it as well, but you come back the next time, and the wind actually was in his face, and that was a tough kick, and he makes probably, maybe we should just back him up more often, but it makes a tough kick and really a momentum builder for us.
Yeah, the momentum continued with that first of 2 Cam Hart interceptions, gave you guys the ball around midfield with that pick. He has really stepped up this year. What'd you see from him on that play? But in general, what are you seeing from him so far this year?
Well, again, I'll go back to him being an example. If you remember earlier, he got thrown a flag on for pass interference. And sometimes corners tend to back off after a PI call, but he got aggressive and he used great technique and he slid under the defensive back, saw the same route again, trusted his instincts, trusted his technique, and let it go, and made 2 great plays. One a little bit later in the game, but a similar route where he got underneath the receiver and made a great interception.
Offense really took advantage of that field position with the big touchdown to Kevin Austin, who a week ago had no catches against Purdue. He really performed for you guys this week against Wisconsin. Talk me through that catch and what you saw from him against the Badgers.
Yeah, so it was really going to be a short hitch route that got converted because of the press coverage, and they were pressing a lot into the short field. And so I think everybody knew, and that was part of that play call, that this was going to be a one-on-one throw to Kevin. It was just a matter of, securing the catch, which he did. He broke the plane, and then the ball came out. So we were pretty confident it was going to be a touchdown. Kevin made a nice job of going up and getting the ball, and Jack put in a position where he could make the catch.
You went into halftime up 10-3. You guys dominated time of possession, 20 minutes to 10 in that first half. I'm just curious, when you're in halftime, that game was playing out, I think, the way people maybe expected, knockdown, drag out. What was the message at halftime?
Well, we needed to clean up a couple of things. We felt like from an offensive standpoint, there were some opportunities down the field that we left out there that we needed to want to come back to in the second half. And then secondly, from a defensive standpoint, we were in a really good position, but we needed to be better with our eyes. A couple of times they got the ball outside and over the top. So just some slight adjustments, and then just keep playing, because Wisconsin's not going to go away. Keep playing hard for 4 quarters.
You mentioned Wisconsin not going away. You guys faced some adversity, right? They tied the game. Jack gets injured. When you put Drew Pine in the game, was there a conversation, or just what did you see when Drew went into the game? Was there any fear on the sideline? What was the response by the team?
No, there's a lot of confidence in Drew Pine. I mean, he's a winner. He's a guy that has a swagger to him, that he goes into the game, he believes he's going to win, and that's why we recruited him. The quarterback position is such that, look, you've got to have the talents, but you also have the confidence, and he's got a great confidence in him, and the guys around him believe in him, went in there and made some plays.
So Wisconsin took a 13-10 lead. I think the play that shifted everything, watching it back, was the kick return from Chris Tyree.
No doubt.
Special teams played a huge factor in this game. game, but the kick return, talk me through what you saw in that play. How was he able to rip off that touchdown?
Well, 11 guys doing their job, and Chris being the 11th because he had to run fast, and he does. But 10 guys really doing a great job sustaining their blocks for a long period of time, and then Chris obviously, being the X factor there with elite speed, being able to run away from their safety and their kicker at the very end. So just well executed across the board. We went to a field return, which requires that team to hold their blocks a little bit longer. So just well executed.
I do want to get your opinion on how special teams have performed this year, because we talked about the Dorr 50-plus yarder. I think Jay Bramblett had a 72-yard punt in this game. He hit a home run on the kickoff return. Coach Polian has special teams really being a factor so far this year. What have you liked from them?
Well, you've got some experienced and veteran kickers, right? And Jay and John, though, that certainly helps. Mike Vincent, our long snapper, is flawless in terms of the work he does. We never mentioned him, and that's a good thing, I guess, when you don't talk about your long snapper. Jay does a great job as the holder as well. So when you have those specialists that have the experience, and then you have the willingness of guys that want to be on these teams, and they create a pride in it, and Coach Polian does a great job of building that unit pride. You have the makings of having a group that can influence games like they did in this one.
So 17-13, defense gets you the ball back. This was, I think, Drew's real, marquee drive. He put together some great throws. We're going to look at one later on 3rd and 4 to get a first down. But what did you see from Drew to orchestrate the drive that gave you guys your first two-score lead of the game?
Well, escapability. You saw him move in the pocket. He got out of harm's way, was able to find Avery Davis on a key play. And then I think just discipline within the pocket. He got through his progressions, got the ball out to where it needed to be managed, what we wanted him to manage. Obviously, we had the missed protection on the one sack fumble. That's hard to put it on him. But just did a really good job of managing the offense and really getting the ball to the playmakers.
This is where the game took the unexpected turn for me. The defense, really took control of this game in the fourth quarter. Cam Hart's second interception really, I think, put you guys in a position to put this game away. What did you see on that play?
Again, similar situation. Saw the slant coming from the wide field. Remember now, we moved Cam from the boundary, the short field, to the wide field because we like his athletic ability. Remember, he was a wide receiver who's got really good hands, and we wanted him to be free and run. The wide field gives him that opportunity. He took advantage of that, got underneath another slant, makes a great pick, and puts us in great position to get 3 more points on the board.
So that made it 27-13. Wisconsin at this point still probably thinks they have a chance, though, right? 2-score game, try to score, get an onside kick. Yeah. And then Jack Kaiser makes the pick 6. We're going to look at it also later in Irish Intel, but that was a play that really sealed the game for you guys.
Jack set it up, perfectly. They had thrown the ball out to the flat a couple of times on that swing route. He had kind of stayed in a curl a couple of times. He saw the same play, and he went right through the number 2 receiver, didn't even touch him, went right to the flat. Mertz didn't even see it coming, picked it off, and it was a great way to see an interception return for a touchdown because when you watch it from the end zone, you have 10 other players sprinting to the end zone as well. It was pretty neat.
And then they weren't done, right? No. Drew White makes even another pick 6. To see the defense, it was such a topic early in the season, maybe allowing more big plays than you guys would like. The way they've played the last 2 games has been exceptional. To see them get rewarded by scoring the ball too, what did you see from them? Were you proud of the defense in that moment?
No doubt. It was a deflection on a play. Drew makes the catch, and then some really good blocks down the field. Isaiah Foskey knocks out 2 offensive linemen on a clean block. It wasn't a blindside block, and it took us about 15 seconds to get in the end zone because Drew cut back on the field a couple of times. But it was great to see one of our captains get in the end zone.
You got not 1 but 2 Gatorade baths after this one. I think it was a good example. The team really wanted to win this game for you and put you in the position that you are now as the winningest coach in history. Some great footage from inside the locker room. Just the few hours after that game was won, did it sink in? What did it feel like to be a part of that victory?
Well, when you're stuck in traffic going through Chicago, you have plenty of time to think about those things. So, no, it was just, to me, the win was much more about beating Wisconsin. You think about all that other stuff later when people are congratulating you. And look, I'm grateful, for all of the well-wishers and people that have reached out, and that means a ton to me. But what was really important at that time was beating Wisconsin and watching our guys really grow and develop from that win. Getting a chance to see Jacob Lacey get in there and play. Watching Cam Hart overcome, some struggles early on. Getting Drew Pine in the game and watching him play. That's really what it's all about. And so for me, that was the satisfaction in the game more than anything else.
After the game, last question, what tasted better, the Gatorade or the Macedo?
Oh, this is not even close. It's not even close. Macedo is not a sponsor, so the Gatorade was great.
There we go. Gatorade's always great. You're listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com. Welcome back to The Brian Kelly Show. It's time for this week's installment of Irish Intel, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for Irish Intel as we go inside the plays from Notre Dame's victory over Wisconsin. Coach, this is, of course, the big touchdown return by Chris Tyree that really swung the game in your favor here. Talk me through what goes into returning a kickoff return for a touchdown like this.
Well, generally, you're going to have a boundary return or a short field return, or you're going to go all the way out to the field. This one now we change and we go from the short field. You see Chris Tyree is going to catch this into the short field, and we're going to take this all the way to the wide field. To do that requires incredible patience because everybody's got to stay on their block. We get George Takis on the kickout block, and then Matt Salerno is going to lead up here. You see that angle? We've got a big window, and now 29 right here gets the kickout block right there, and now the kicker is the man left right there. He gets the move, and now it's just beating the safety. The kick out right here and then inside, and now it's safety 26 and 6, and speed wins.
All right, Coach, another play here. This is the touchdown that gives you guys the 2-score lead in this game. Drew Pine orchestrates a great drive, finishes it off by finding Kevin Austin.
Yeah, so this is a bait play, really, and we're trying to bait the defense to double our best player in this instance, Mike Mayer. So you can see to the left of the screen, the inside backer and the safety are going to double. So we're going to get our eyes to Mike Mayer and pull both of them. You can see right here, both of them pull out, which opens up that window for Kevin now to replace him. So Kevin now is going to drive and replace where the double took place. Feed the ball in there, touchdown.
So is this the kind of play where Drew right away, he's going to take his eyes to the left, intentionally trying to clear that space out?
Yeah, he gives active eyes right away. You can see, watch his helmet from behind here. Watch his helmet turn to the left immediately. He gives active eyes, moves the defense, opens up that window. Kevin slides underneath, gets the football.
Welcome to this week's Look Ahead segment. As always, we're joined by Bill Reese as we get the chance to preview the upcoming game, which is a big one, Bill. It is a top 10 matchup at Notre Dame Stadium, which is always exciting. We're going to talk about Cincinnati in a second, but I want to look back first, as we always do, at this Wisconsin game. One of the more interesting final scores I can remember seeing. This was a defensive battle, 13-10 until the 31-3 fourth quarter. Just generally speaking, what were your biggest takeaways from the game over Wisconsin this past Saturday?
Well, that fourth quarter was really crazy with all the scoring and big plays that we were able to create. The thing about that environment, it was just electric. Two really good football programs and great fan bases and in a great environment. And it was just really an opportunity for two very good teams to play. And it was a defensive battle for a long time, and special teams broke the game open. We added a touchdown offensively there in the fourth quarter, and then, some huge defensive takeaways for touchdowns. That was the icing on the cake.
The defense is rightfully so getting a lot of attention for the big scores at the end of the game. But I think as I look back at this game, the first half only allowing 3 points. And again, those 3 points came after a rough first offensive drive that kind of put them on their heels with great field position for Wisconsin. To me, that first half was really impressive. What did you see before they broke the game open with the big plays from this defense? To me, it seems like they're really starting to get a hang of this new scheme with Marcus Freeman.
Well, they really did a great job, and it started with taking away Wisconsin's strength, and that was running the football. And they really didn't have an answer. They tried a couple of different things in the second half, but those plays didn't work. We really made them one-dimensional, and when they had to throw the football, we had great pressure up front. Sometimes it was just four guys rushing the passer. And when we brought 5 or 6, the pressure became really, I think, unbearable for Wisconsin. So we did a great job on the back end covering the receivers, and then when the opportunities presented themselves to intercept the ball, Cam Hart had a great day, and Jack Kaiser and Drew White. Yeah. So
the other thing is, you mentioned those takeaways for a defense when they're able to get in the end zone. I mean, what does that do for their confidence? The fact that they're adding points to the scoreboard has to get them so fired up and let them know that all this work now is starting to pay off in a big way.
Well, it's very exciting for them. It sees all their work, their preparation all come to a head. And when you can score defensively, it makes the job of the offense easier. Just the overall team morale just gets boosted so high.
On the other side, offensively, the first half, I thought it was really a testament to the way the offense is clicking. They didn't put up that many points, but there were multiple drives of 15 plus plays they took together. They had possession for, I think, 20 minutes in the first half. It seemed like the offense really set the tone. And even though it was 10-3, it just felt like Notre Dame was in control of that game in the first half because of the offense.
Well, Wisconsin had been one of the leaders in the country in time of possession. And offensively, Notre Dame, we had the ball 46 plays in the first half, and won the time of possession in the first half. And really, we're starting to move the ball, starting to get comfortable with, how they were playing, and, being able to protect and give Jack some time to get the ball down the field. So it was really critical, I think, to, keep the Wisconsin offense off the field and get some confidence for the offense to move it against a very good Wisconsin defense.
One of the big stories in this game, of course, was Jack Cohn suffering that injury and then Drew Pine coming in. And I just thought that he was so impressive, specifically orchestrating that touchdown drive to make it a 2-score game. I mean, you've been around football long enough. For the backup, it's such a tricky role. For him to come in and perform the way he did, what does that say about him as a quarterback?
Well, there isn't anyone that's more prepared on the football team than Drew. There's no one who takes his role more seriously than Drew. He works, studies, prepares as if he's the starter. And when his opportunity called, he stepped right in, went 6 of 8, 81 yards and a touchdown, and really did a great job of operating the offense and executing within the offense. He made some great decisions, with the ball, and resulted in a touchdown for us. And he really did a great job. And I would expect when Drew's number is called here in the future, you'll see the same type of performance.
You alluded to it earlier, and I think they deserve some praise. The Chris Tyree kickoff return for a touchdown really swung this game as well. Notre Dame was trailing by 3 at the time. It made it then a 4-point lead. For a play like that with so much momentum, what do you think that did for the team's overall confidence?
Well, that was huge. When you see one of your teammates go 96 yards and outrun the opponent, there's nothing like it. But, there's 10 other guys on that unit. They work extremely hard to master the techniques and to master the requirements of playing on special teams, because they don't get them for a whole period or whole practice. They just get a few periods here and there. It's a testimony to how Coach Polian does with them, gets them ready, gives them a great game plan. And today, last Saturday, they really executed at a high level.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that third phase of the game. It seems like this year, more than any year that I've been around here for the last 5 or 6, special teams is making huge impacts. I think about Jonathan Dorr hit a 51-yarder. Jay Bramblett, I think, had 2 50-plus yard punts. One was, I think, 72 yards, and you had the touchdown return. Dorr hit a game winner at Florida State. It just seems like almost every game, the special teams is having an impact. That's such a game changer when you have that ability for a football team, isn't it?
Well, it's extremely important, and Coach Kelly really emphasizes special teams. And when he and Coach Polian meet, they carve out time within the practice schedule to make sure that special teams has enough time, has all of the proper personnel that Coach Polian needs. And we're starting to work in some younger players, giving them an opportunity to get their feet wet, and they've responded and performed very well. So I think you'll see that trend continuing of really good special teams play.
All right, let's look ahead to Cincinnati. I think when we were looking at the schedule, or I'll speak for myself, when I was looking at the schedule, I had my eyes set on Wisconsin, understandably so. They're in Chicago. It's a great regional matchup. But the more I now look at the schedule and how it's all shaken out, this appears to be, and I think Coach Kelly even said it today in his press conference, the best team Notre Dame will have faced thus far. It's a very good Cincinnati team. Luke Fickell's done an outstanding job there. Just in general, with Cincinnati coming in, big picture, and then we'll drill down on some of the specifics. What does Cincinnati present as a test? Because they're a top 10 team coming into Notre Dame Stadium, and that's a real threat.
Yeah, and deservedly so. They've won over 30 games the last 3 years. They've been extremely competitive in every ball game that they've played. They played Georgia down in the wire last year in a bowl game. This is a very well-coached, very good personnel football team on both sides of the ball. Playmakers everywhere. They play with a toughness to them. They play with, some, real good intensity and toughness. And, this will be a real challenge for our team. No question about it.
Let's talk offense first. Always got to start with the quarterback, Desmond Ridder, very experienced. Look at his completion percentage numbers throughout his career, kind of the mid 60s. So he's really reliable. He's probably not going to be fazed by the environment, having played in so many games. What do you guys expect to see from him, and what challenges does he pose to Notre Dame?
Well, he's a true dual threat that can run, and they have a lot of design plays for him. He's the second leading rusher on their team. But he can also extend plays and run around and make things happen when the pocket breaks down and when he gets fleshed outside. The other thing, though, is when he is in the pocket, he's very effective. He's got very good arm strength. He's very accurate. He can penetrate all areas of the field with the ball with very good velocity. He's able to put touch on the ball as well. He throws a real nice fade pass down inside the 20. He can do it all. And I know there are a lot of NFL scouts that come through here that have been to Cincinnati and say he's an impressive prospect.
The guys he'll be throwing to, when you look at the numbers, they've really spread it out so far this year. There's not maybe one guy that's had a dominant performance, but there's a lot of different guys that get their hands on the ball. As you guys look to break them down, who are the receivers maybe that you might see featured most that Notre Dame fans will have to be keyed on?
Well, one guy the Notre Dame fans will remember is Mike Young, who was here and transferred out a couple of years ago, and he's their starting slot receiver. And he, along with Alec Pierce, have been targeted the most by Ridder so far this season. Both those guys have had real good campaigns for him. Pierce is a bigger guy, can really stretch the field, goes up and gets the ball very well. He's been impressive for them. And then they've got a couple of speed receivers in Scott and Turner, guys that were track athletes that have legitimate speed and are guys that I'm sure they're going to try to get one-on-one and get the ball down the field too.
You mentioned that Ridder is the second leading rusher. Their leading rusher, Jerome Ford, averaging about 6 yards per carry, but he's pounded it in 6 times as well. What kind of threat does he pose on the ground for Cincinnati?
Well, he was highly recruited out of high school. He originally went to Alabama and transferred out of Alabama and has come up and made a big impact at Cincinnati. He's the lead back this year. He was second on their team a year ago as a rusher, but he's got excellent size, 215 pounds, very good speed. He had a 79-yard touchdown against Georgia last year, so he can run. But he does a very good job in the pass game as well, catching, blocking. He's a complete back. And again, another guy that, as NFL scouts come through here, have been impressed with what he has done at Cincinnati.
On the other side, defensively, schematically, what do they do? What kind of things can Notre Dame fans expect to see from them as defensive approach is concerned?
Well, their defense looks a lot like our defense because it's a 3 down and a lot of blitzing and a lot of different coverages that they like to mix in. Primarily a man-to-man team in the back end because they have such good cover guys. Ahmad Gardner is one of the best corners in the country. about 6'2" and can press and run. And he's been, very productive there in their secondary. And then they have an excellent pass rusher in Myjai Sanders, who is about 6'4", about 245, very good speed off the edge, very similar to Karlaftis that we saw against Purdue. So we're going to have to be able to protect and we're going to have to be able to get off of tight coverage.
Well, Bill, as always, we appreciate you taking some time to both look back at last week and preview the upcoming opponent. I think that it's going to be another great environment with two top 10 teams in Notre Dame Stadium. When you think of college football, it doesn't get much better than that. So looking forward to the game, and we'll talk to you next week.
We are too. It's going to be a great environment, and it's good to be back home at Notre Dame Stadium.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's edition of Irishography.
Here's Pine over the middle. Touchdown, Irish! Drew Pine off the bench.
For the past 2 years, I was back up last year, and every single day, every single rep, every single lift, every single film session, that's what made me ready for Saturday. And, I've always tried to have a positive attitude no matter what the situation was. And I always said to myself that I was going to prepare like the starter. When that time comes, I'm going to be ready, because I'd be really ashamed if I didn't practice so hard, if I didn't take it as serious, if I didn't watch enough film and I wasn't ready to play. That would really hurt me inside. So I knew that when that time came, I was going to be ready. The reason I came to Notre Dame was, because the people here are so special. It's the best mix between academics and football. I'm so happy to be able to come here and, meet some of my best friends that I know I'm going to be friends with for the rest of my life, whether it's on the field or off the field. So, I think the relationships I've made here is something that's very special. Getting a game ball on a team that I've always idolized growing up is something that, is a memory that I'll have for the rest of my life.
First down to the 46. Mertz again underneath, intercepted. Cam Hart.
When I'm playing receiver, there's a certain way that you're going to run certain routes, and I feel like me being a defensive back, I can see myself and some of the receivers see the way they come off the line of scrimmage with the certain tempo and certain speed and the type of breaks that they're going to make throughout the route. I feel like this playing receiver and playing at the high level of Notre Dame allows me to play defensive back at a much higher level. Coming to Notre Dame, it's attached with excellence, and I just feel like even with me being a person that wasn't a Notre Dame fan growing up, didn't know much about Notre Dame, just that connection with excellence that Notre Dame has, and people who haven't even been to Notre Dame or don't even know what happens on a day-to-day basis here, just understand what Notre Dame is about. And I think that was huge for me, going to a school with that type of reputation. And also just being in this environment is wonderful. It's a big family environment. I feel like the people that I see on an everyday basis is someone that I can have a conversation with, and it's not anything like where I feel uncomfortable or things of that sort. And that's what I enjoy most about this school, this team, everything.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's final check-in.
Hi, Brian. Hey, listen,
How you doing?
Brian, I'll bite the bullet for everybody. Ask you the questions that everybody wants to know.
Okay. Well, it's just you and me then today.
It's the quarterback situation. How's Cohn and Buckner looked in practice this week? And also, can you give us updates on Carmody and Heinisch, too?
Yes. In our 2-minute drill yesterday, we had Cohn in there. And I thought he did a pretty good job. He's ahead of where I thought he would be on Wednesday. Obviously he's got today and tomorrow. They've kind of, I think Drew and Jack have, kind of split the first team reps. And then we've continued to work Tyler's package that he's traditionally had in weeks past. So we're getting all three of them ready right now. Carmody has been getting a lot of work at left tackle. He too is improving each week. So, we think we're in the right kind of position for him to be able to play on Saturday. at left tackle, Mike Carmody. Oh, and Heinisch. Kurt, he went and saw a specialist, and he was cleared from having any kind of, head injury. It was something different. So he's excited, but he won't play this weekend. And we expect to have him back next week.
Tim Priester, you're up next.
Brian, you said, like, somebody asked you about Jack Cohn and input to you regarding Wisconsin. I get it, that's a player, but Marcus Freeman, Mike Mickens, and their knowledge of everything defensively with Cincinnati, how valuable has that been to you? And then also the evolution of Mike Denbrock as a play caller. How have you seen him change? I'm sure Desmond Ridder gives him a little bit more flexibility too.
Yeah, well, Tim, the reality of it is that we've been really working against this defense since last spring. And I can tell you this, that if you're just trying to prepare for it for 2 or 3 days, there's some complexity to it. That's where we've gotten the insight more than anything else. I mean, Mike and Marcus are not bringing anything to the table other than the installation of the defense that we've gone against, as I mentioned earlier, since last spring. So that's the knowledge base from that perspective. Relative to Mike, there's no doubt that a really good quarterback that has arm talent and the ability to escape helps you as an offensive coordinator. But Mike, look, I haven't been around many guys that are as detailed and hardworking and get a sense of the game and how the game needs to be played than Mike. So, we're up against a great challenge there, a really good offense, an outstanding quarterback, and an accomplished and experienced play caller in Mike.
Eric Hansen, you're up next.
Brian, I have to start with, I'm very jealous of the way that Finn so completely handled the injury question. I do.
Well, you know what? Listen, I think you're going to have a little bit of a conversation because he seems to be stealing a little bit of your thunder.
Okay. Well, I'm going to steal a little bit of it back. My first part of my question is a follow-up on Blake Fisher's timetable, how he's doing. And then the second part of the question is, what did you learn from the Caleros Pike, Reese Golson dynamics that might help you with this dynamic with your multiple quarterbacks moving forward?
Well, let's start with Blake. That injury is generally something that takes you, through most of the season, if not the entire season. So, we're not in a position where we're thinking about him each week. It's kind of like go through your process, make sure that you're not missing any rehab. And if Rob Hunt comes to me, in week, 10 and says, hey, we're well ahead of schedule, then, we'll get our hopes up then. But this is something where, it's not even part of what we think about on a day-to-day basis that Blake is going to be back with us during the season. As it relates to the quarterback situation, each one of them, I think, Eric, is so different in that they bring, different traits, and, the offense, has to be geared towards, what their strengths and what your offensive capabilities are. So, I just think more than anything else, it's about how and what is in the best interest of your football team and in particular your offensive production and how you use those guys. It was easier for me, at different junctions to use guys that were dissimilar than similar, because you could clearly kind of carve out what they were going to do. And when they're kind of similar, how does one better serve what you're doing than the other? But when they are dissimilar, then it makes it a little bit easier to kind of carve out their path. I think that's probably what stands out the most to me in my experience of dealing with multiple quarterbacks.
As a reminder, if you have a question for Coach Kelly, please use the raise hand function. We'll go to Pete Sampson next.
Hey, Brian. I was interested if it's Cone or Pine, does the call sheet for Tommy change? And then you mentioned sort of strengths, and I think we can all watch Jack Cone and see his strengths, and see Tyler Buchner and see his strengths. Drew Pine is maybe in between. So you could describe what makes Pine good, like what the strengths of his game are.
I would say probably just a little bit more escapability, I think more than anything else, he just has ability to find people on the move a little bit more than maybe Jack. Jack's going to be in a much more of a progression read. But they're much more similar than they are dissimilar. But that's probably where I give it. I think Jack's a little bit, probably a little bit more in terms of experience relative to seeing things, third down pressures, things like that. So there's kind of a give take there, Pete, in terms of what each guy brings, to the lineup.
Patrick Angle, you're up next.
Brian, on Howard Cross, and look at him and maybe a little undersized for a nose tackle, but it doesn't really seem to phase him in a sense or hinder his ability to get past interior linemen. How do you think he makes up for that, and what's made him fit in that role pretty well?
Extreme first step quickness. I mean, he is, off the ball, very, very difficult to get your hands on him. So, it starts there. He's about 280 pounds, but he's very, very strong, strongest hands that we have for an interior lineman. You saw how quick Lacey is off the ball as well. Those two guys are as quick as we have, that hover in that 275, 280 range. But Howard's hands are so heavy, and his first step quickness is as good as we've had here at Notre Dame.
Angelo DiCarlo, you're next.
Brian, two questions about quarterbacks on each side. For Buchner, how much more is he practicing now, or maybe his workload has increased again relative to last week when he was trying to come back from the injury, and then where he is, in comparison to where he was practicing, 3 weeks ago pre-injury? And then for Desmond Ridder, what's the biggest challenges he brings with, the success he's had over his career?
Yeah, Buckner's back to where he was going into, where he got a really good sense of the game against Toledo. And obviously Purdue. So I think we're back to that level and hope to increase that as we go into next week. We wanted to make sure he was, physically feeling great. He looks great this week. So I think he's back to that level, and then we'll start to build back, more inventory into what we're doing offensively with him. As it relates to Ridder, he's got the ability to put the ball down the field. I think his deep balls are as good as we've seen in a long time. I mean anybody that we've played in a long time. He throws the ball down the field very, very well. And then his ability to run. I mean, those are the two things that separate him from a lot of the quarterbacks that we've played, is the ability to push the ball down the field, deep balls, and that's what he wants to do. And then his ability to run. Those two things are, and I mentioned Perkins from Virginia earlier in the year. Perkins threw the ball pretty good against us in the first half down the field and had the escapability. We needed to keep him in the pocket to have a better second half against Virginia, which we did. We'll need to do the same thing with Ridder.
Chuck Freeby is up next.
Brian, how much do you play up protecting home field and the fact that you're an underdog in this game? Does that motivate your team at all? Do you use that as motivation?
Not really. I mean, they understand, what protecting the home field is. I mean, they've done it 26 times in a row. This is much more about 2 top 10 teams, and, you got to go out and attack your opponent. I mean, you can't sit around and wait. I mean, this is a heavyweight fight. If you're just going to dance around and wait, you're going to get knocked out. This is a really good football team. So you got to come out swinging. You got to be aggressive, and you got to take it to your opponent. When you have 2 top 10 teams playing, you better come out ready to go, or you're going to get knocked out.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's Look Ahead, where we highlight Notre Dame's upcoming opponent. 4-0 going into this game against Cincinnati. I think everybody had Wisconsin circled, but you just mentioned when you were talking to the press earlier today, this is probably the best team you've faced so far this season in Cincinnati. What challenges did they pose to you guys?
Well, explosiveness on the offense. And look, anytime you have a veteran quarterback who knows how to win, that's a team that you have to fear. So this is a very, very talented quarterback. He's got weapons around him. Alec Pierce is an outstanding receiver. I told the press earlier that reminds me of Ben Skoranek, who we had here last year. Tall, athletic, rangy, goes up and gets the football. Outstanding running back, and then a veteran defense. Luke has got his hands all over that. Obviously, Coach Tressel does a great job there. But this is a well-coached football team, athletic. They love to play the game, and it'll be a great atmosphere with 2 top 10 teams playing in Notre Dame Stadium.
I was going to ask that top 10 matchup in Notre Dame Stadium. What will the message be to the team throughout this week to get them ready for that big matchup?
Well, they'll be ready. It's preparation for us, and it's the ability then to, understand that we've got to keep our composure and maintain, our emotions because it's going to be, an emotional game, and we've got to maintain that, and then we need our home field advantage. I mean, it's got to get loud here, and it's got to be a green out. But when it's 3rd down and Cincinnati's trying to get their cadence, it's got to be so loud that it really feels like a home field advantage. So we need that from our fans.
Coach, as always, thanks for the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
You have been listening to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com.